listen-only mode.
Oh, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Hidden Elements that Impact Your Physical Recovery. My name's Elaine Wilkins, and I'm the founder of the Chrysalis Effect. And for over 7 years now, we've been working very closely with people on their recovery and also working with professionals and health professionals to support them in their training and development so that they can really work with people in a really well-informed and specialist way. Because certainly when I was ill, back when I very first started my journey of recovery, there were no specialists. There was nowhere to come for this type of information. So it's been my absolute privilege and pleasure and passion really to make sure that we had a community where recovery is the absolute central focus, and this is the work we do on a daily basis. So I'm absolutely delighted that you're joining us today. So just to check that everything's working before we get into our webinar, perhaps if you can just check on your screen and find that little hand icon. If you can click on that, then I know that you can hear me okay. Excellent, lots of hands going up. That is absolutely great. You'll also notice a little question box there. So what would be lovely is if you could just type in there today what's drawn you to come on to this specific webinar. I know that we have with us many new recoverers, so welcome to you if it's your very first live webinar. And also we have our community of existing recoverers that are doing so well in their recovery. Perhaps it'd be nice to know whereabouts you are in the world, because I know we work very much internationally. And also if you are a specialist or a practitioner, it's lovely to have you along, because it's all about us working together and building that knowledge so that we can help every single person get back to that full and joyful life that they deserve. So great, type away in that box. Love to know why you're here today. If you are a guest, because we do often invite guests on, so maybe you're new to the Chrysalis Effect, so again, welcome. So while you're doing that, let's just have a look today at what we're going to be covering. So as I said, it's the hidden elements in terms of recovery, because the difficulty is, as we know, so many of us have experienced that thing where we've had all the tests and we've been sent home, and it's pretty much a journey of trying to figure it out. So the Chrysalis Effect is all about understanding, getting underneath those symptoms, looking at the causes, and it's about education and information and supported recovery step by step. So today we're looking at some more of those hidden elements that just may not be on your radar around what's causing symptoms, and we're going to be looking at the Johari window, which is something that I'm really hoping will shine a light for you on some of those symptoms that you're just not linking to what might be going on. So we're going to look at the sort of button pushing, and I mentioned that on last month's webinar, and we are going to be looking at let me just move this, what we call alien concepts. So be prepared. What I would suggest is if you have got a notepad and paper today, that will be great, because I'm going to be giving you some references to some further webinars and recovery sessions that might be specific to your sort of light bulb moment today. And alien concepts, I'll leave that to Liz to explain, but if there's something that we say today on here and it just creates a bit of a reaction in you, then that's usually when we start looking at alien concepts. And certainly when I was ill, I was completely convinced that I'd caught some virus. It was a completely external physical thing that had happened to me. And you know, the recovery journey is about recognizing and realizing that we have to open our mind to other elements in our recovery. So that will include looking at blind spots. I'm delighted to have with us today Liz Hancock. Work very, very closely with Liz. She's our guest specialist for today, and she's going to be taking you through a lot of this information. She's also going to be sharing a case study with you, and also I'll be giving some information towards the end about moving forward more in your recovery and giving you your next webinar date. So that's where we are today. I'm just going to do a little bit of an intro to this next section. So those of you that are already part of the recovery program and those specialists that are joining us today are very familiar with this, and this is our roadmap to recovery. Now, it's really a bit like the journey of life. You know, we don't kind of move to the next level, do we, until we've learnt the lessons, and it's very much like that with your recovery. So whichever phase of recovery you're in, and it'd be nice if you could type in, actually, for those of you that are going through the recovery program, I know you'll be very familiar with this. Whereabouts do you think you are in the phases of recovery at the moment? We know with phase 1, we've got those early warning symptoms, and we know that with phase 2, that's usually when you're really sofa or bedbound and really feeling very poorly. Phase 3 can be where you can get absolutely stuck, and you might have found yourself practitioner hopping and looking, you know, outside of yourself for all the answers. Phase 4 is where it changes and we move into that internal search and really are prepared to do what it takes, and, you know, lots of tough changes. But the people in phase 4, we just see a complete shift. And that's where well-being is honoured above all else. And phase 5, I don't know if any of you are in that at the moment, where, you know, you're feeling much better and it's great, but sometimes there's a tendency to overdo it and you're just testing the water, whether, you know, maybe you might have those little relapses, and as frustrating as they are, they're part of the process and completely normal, and, you know, they will stop. But it's just learning about honouring all, you know, what you need in life and your sensitivities, and we'll look at that in a little while. And then, of course, phase 6, full recovery. I know we've got some fully recovered people on today, still loving being part of the community, and our phase 6 people absolutely know that there is no way they're going back there. It's a complete confidence in health and well-being in yourself. So let's have a look where we are. We have people saying that phase 5, that's Barbara, well done Barbara, that's great. And then we've got 3 to 4, Eve, phase 6, Elizabeth, yeah, lovely, that's great. And we've got lots of phase 4s, and that's why you are on here today, because you're really always willing to take that new information on board and run with it. And Rosemary's saying she's phase 5, still testing the water. So there's lots of 4s and 5s on here today, and I'm really excited to see people that are saying I'm in phase 3 but I'm moving into phase 4, because phase 3 is the real stuck phase and we don't want to remain there. So excellent, welcome. So, you know, I just want to remind us that, you know, in my 16 years of experience, and that's, you know, 6 years of my own recovery journey, and then since then doing the work that we do here, it is without exception essential to address all these 8 areas for recovery. So the areas that we're focusing on in this particular webinar today tend to fall into the relationship area of the wheel, the emotional health area of the wheel, and the environmental area of the wheel. All of these are intrinsically linked. When you change one thing, it has an impact on all the others, but I just wanted to show you that's pretty much where we are, and a little bit on lifestyle and pace as well. So you'll see how they all fit together. So this is really interesting. Some of you may have seen this on maybe Facebook or something, but this just at first glance looks like a tree, doesn't it? And it's a bit like our illness, you know. At first glance, ME, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, it's an illness with all these multifaceted symptoms, and we can get really stuck in focusing on the symptoms instead of on the recovery. And if we don't have the answers, I mean, I didn't know what I didn't know, and that's the work we do, is helping people to discover those things that may be driving their illness. So when you look at this tree and look a little bit more closely, you might start to notice that actually it's not just a tree. There's some hidden elements in there. So there's some little faces in there. So how many have you been able to spot? Perhaps you could type that in. How many can you see on that tree? You might start to see that first, you know, you might notice 2 at first that stand out quite clearly. And then, yes, there are 10 faces there. Isn't that incredible? So, you know, it's very much like that with your recovery. That in the beginning, you're looking for that external cure or that thing that's going to fix you so that you can get back to living the life that you were living. And then you start to realize that actually there's a lot more to it. So just thought that was a really great analogy. So well done to Kelly for finding that brilliant slide to put that in. So it's absolutely normal to have sticking points in as you're moving through those phases of recovery. And also, if I just go back to that previous slide, you know, there are some areas on this recovery wheel that are much easier for us at certain phases of recovery to face up to and change. So we may be prepared to do some nutritional changes. We may really embrace the idea that we need, you know, to have our thyroid tested, our adrenals tested, all those physical things. We may be really open for that and up for that, but we might be really terrified of the thought of giving up our job and not going back to something we'd spent years training in. So, you know, changing relationships that aren't working, moving house, all those things tend to seem, especially when you're really poorly, they just seem a step too far. They seem outside of the realms of possibility. But actually, as you work through on your recovery, you know, have the right support, you can make the changes in those areas. And as I say, they literally have to be addressed systematically, and you'll find that you'll probably resist one of the area that most needs a change in is probably the last one you want to tackle. That's just how it goes. So understanding, you know, that downward spiral of physical illness, and we are absolutely 100% in support here, aren't we? We know that it's physical, we know that it's emotional, we know that there's lots of things that need to be tackled. So we're not saying by any stretch of the imagination that this is all, you know, in the mind. However, you cannot separate mind from body, and that, you know, one impacts the other. So understanding the downward spiral physically and addressing all of that is super important. But also we have to look at what might be going on, you know, below the surface. So in terms of physical, so we don't want to leave that out. I just thought I'd put a slide on here today so that if, you know, things like thyroid are things that you're interested in knowing more about, and adrenals, then you're looking at session 7 for that. Food intolerances, session 7 and 21 there. And if pain is a real issue for you, then session 17 is going to be really helpful, because it's about pain release, not just pain relief. So also there's lots of webinars in your members area on physical recovery. So I just wanted to mention that, because I know we've got a lot of new recoverers that are just getting familiar with the sessions and things like that. And if you are working with one of our Chris Effect specialists, then they can tailor the program, and you can access these different sessions a little bit earlier than just waiting for them to come through. Okay, so whoops, just having a bit of trouble clicking onto the next one. Right, okay. So I just wanted to ask you a question, because we are starting to look at hidden things. Maybe just think about your own life at the moment. You know, perhaps when you are with certain people in your life, you just feel quite a strong reaction when they say something or do something. And we just want to start moving into that realm at the moment. So who do you know pushes your buttons? You might want to just type that in. It's great to get it out there, or just write it on your notepad, whatever works for you. So is there someone in your life that pushes your buttons? For me, it is my brother. Oh my goodness, we can't be in a room together, you know, and it's been like that since I was a child. So we've got managers, we've got brothers, we've got sisters, we've got parents, we've got ex-partners coming up. So we all know, you know, what that does. So actually, I just wanted to flag that up, because for us sensitive people that go on to develop these conditions, you know, this button pushing is really something we have to watch out for, and we have to start taking action to protect ourselves from it. So those people that push buttons, often it's some old things. They might just say something quite innocuous and don't mean anything by it. But what happens is because we attach meaning to what a certain event, whether it's somebody saying something or something happening. What happens is when that thing happens or that person speaks to us, we attach layers of meaning from very old experiences. So it can be something like a letter arriving, or it can be you're waiting for a letter to come or an email to come through and it doesn't come. And it really has a real deep impact on you. And what it is, it's down to highly charged emotional moments from your past. So these very simple things, what they do is they trigger a massive reaction because you're bringing to that single little thing about the letter or what the person said years and years and years of layers of being impacted by something that's highly charged and emotional event. And I know that Liz is going to talk to you in a little bit more detail about that. And the great news is that you can address it. Because what we want to do is we want to deal with the stuff underneath the iceberg, don't we? The stuff that we're not conscious of, so that we can clear all of that up. And guess what? When we do that, a lot of the symptoms just fall away naturally as we go through and literally discover what's going on and also address it. So I just wanted to sort of frame that up a little bit because that's what we're going to be looking at. So what we are going to be looking at today specifically are those blind spots, the things that you may not in any shape or form have awareness of that could be severely impacting your recovery. So let me just see, find your little hand sign there. Who's really hungry to know what might be impacting their recovery that they have no awareness of? So click on your little hand sign there if that's you. Because what that shows me is that you are in a brilliant space with a really good open mind around finding that out. So I'm just going to locate Liz because I'm going to introduce her in a minute. Fantastic, I've got her there. So let me introduce you now to one of our Chris Effect specialists. Liz began working as a therapist in 2002. She studied different types of therapies and practices an eclectic mix, as she does not believe that one size fits all. She worked for Relate for 11 years, which gave her a great understanding of relationships and family dynamics, and she fully recovered from her own journey with fibromyalgia in 2008. Her life as a therapist started off helping people with emotional pain. And the more clients she dealt with, the more she realised that stress and emotions were inextricably linked with pain and illness, so physical pain and illness. After coming across the work of Dr. John Sarno and training with Serpa, she now has many clients who present with physical problems. So becoming a Chris Effect practitioner and trainer was the perfect combination with the work that she was doing. I remember meeting Liz. I remember it was in Birmingham. We were doing a workshop and Liz came along, and it was just one of those magical moments where I know that she felt like she'd come home, and I just knew that we were going to be doing a lot of work together in the future, and that's exactly what's happened. So this also has aided her reflection on her own journey to recovery and led to her recording a CD called Believe in Freedom from Fibromyalgia. She gets referrals from employee assistance programs, which is helping people who present through a confidential employees helpline for short-term counselling. And here she often comes across clients who are in phase 1, in the denial phase, and she can help them get on the path to recovery because they're absolutely struggling in the workplace. So when time allows, she runs workshops on some of the most common presenting problems such as anxiety, and we're absolutely delighted to have her with us today. So let me just open up the lines. Liz, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's perfect. Let me just check with everybody else that they can hear you okay. So I just put all the hands down for a moment. If you heard Liz speaking there, can you pop your hands up? Excellent. Liz, it's loud and clear, so that's absolutely wonderful. Brilliant. So just before we go into your section, Liz, I'm just going to revisit just some of the reasons why people are on today, because I thought that might help you. So we have Eric on saying his wife has fibromyalgia and he wants to learn more about it. Colleen's saying she's ready to do more work on herself. Yay, great. Carol's saying super excited to have received training materials. She's starting to become, oh, she's joining us as one of our specialists in training. We have other specialists with us, with Jackie saying morning from sunny Lewis. We have Sarah from Harrogate in North Yorkshire. And we have Kelly saying she's currently on holiday in Thailand and she's at a detox retreat and she's new. So welcome, Kelly. That's great. Sounds like you're having a fabulous time on working on your health. And Eve is new to the program as well. And Fiona is also newbie. She's coming along to find out more today. Oh, Elizabeth is now recovered from ME and she's keen to support others. It's a really typical journey, isn't it? Sarah's saying she had ME for 5 years, done all sorts, but joined Crisis Effect just a few weeks ago. So she's really looking forward to this. Claire's saying on a recovery journey from chronic fatigue syndrome, looking for new tips and advice. She's based in the UK. Ida has fibromyalgia. Becky started the program for fibromyalgia and she's fallen off the wagon. She said life is stressful and she's had a flare up. So looking for more advice to help her. So you're in the right place, Becky. That's great. So that's just a few of the people that are on today. We're almost at capacity, Liz. We've had so many people want to come on. So what I will do now is I will just put myself on silent there, and I'll just let me know when you want me to change the slides. Okay.
Okay, that's brilliant, Elaine. So if you could move on to the first slide. Fabulous. Okay, the first thing I want to say about today is actually we're going to be talking about some quite difficult concepts. So I don't expect you to be able to take it in all in one go. And I know because we're these A-type personalities, sometimes we beat ourselves up, don't we, because we don't get things or we have to go back and revisit them or we didn't get it first time. So what I'm trying to say here is that's okay. And don't forget that you can go back and listen to these webinars again because they're all recorded and you can go and have a listen and play them at your own pace. So don't worry if you get a bit lost and you think, oh, this is an awful lot of information, because it is. And we're trying to give you as much information as we can. But take it at your own pace. So first of all, I'm going to explain what the Johari window is, and it's really a representation of ourselves. And if you look at those 4 squares, they're all the same size, aren't they? What we're always trying to do in therapy and in recovery is, if you look at box 1, that's the open part of ourselves, and that's the part that's sort of known to ourselves and it's also known to others, and that's the bit that we're trying to increase. So we're always trying to make that window bigger, if that makes sense to you. So this is the bit that you know and everyone else knows. To be honest, it's the simplest bit. So we always want to try and make that pane of glass as big as we can, and we want to try and reduce the others. I'm going to be going into more detail on all of them, but for this slide, I'm just going to sort of take you through and just give you an overview of what it's about. So moving on to number 2, this is a really important one. This is your blind spots. Now, these are things that other people can see about you, but you're often blind to them. And I'll give you some more specific examples when we get there. Number 3 is the hidden area. Now, this is the area that is known to us, but actually it's not to others, because we keep it hidden for various reasons. We don't want people to know some of the things about us. So, for example, you've probably learned, those of you that have been on the programme for a while, you've learned about your high degrees of sensitivity. We always feel that we can't actually show this to the world because, for fear of judgment, I think, from other people. So that's often something we keep hidden. We often feel guilty about things. We have, maybe loss in our lives that we don't particularly acknowledge and we don't particularly show to the world. We may have family secrets, and we'll be talking a bit more about that, when we get into family dynamics later. And there's lots of things that we hide, but we choose to hide them for a reason, and that's usually because we don't want to be judged by other people, or we feel embarrassed about other people knowing. And then finally 4, that's quite a difficult one, because that's the bit that's unknown, and it's unknown to us and unknown to other people as well. And these are the bits that are often in your unconscious mind, very deeply buried. So they're things like beliefs, behaviours. We don't really get why we believe the things we do or the behaviours that we have. There will be some fears in there. We might be frightened of something, but we don't know why. And there will also be deeply buried memories that our conscious mind has decided to protect us to forget, but actually they're still there, and they can be what we know as unconscious triggers, the button pushers. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move on. So if you could move the slide on, please, Elaine. We're going to move on to the blind area. And I love this, the alien concepts, because they really are alien until you sort of know about them. So we're going to talk about 4 different concepts. And obviously the reason we've called them alien is they are in our blind spot. Not always, not always. Some of them have come into awareness, but they are the common ones that certainly I see in clients that are actually in their blind spots. And they can be the tricky ones to discuss, because they can be quite sensitive. So when we do get to know about them, or someone mentions them to us, we think they can't possibly apply to us. I often find it strange with some clients who I maybe mention to them, have you, what did you think about session number whatever? And they'll say, oh, yes, I remember that session. Oh, yeah, I didn't really think it applied to me, so I moved on to the next one. There's a real clue there, because that's your unconscious mind's way of protecting you from something that's going to be really helpful. So I often say to clients, okay, that's the one to go back and have a real look at, because you've been moved away from it for a reason. So the sort of things that we're going to discuss in this blind area, we're going to discuss 4 things. There are lots, but we've chosen these 4 because we think that they really are important in terms of recovery. There's family dynamics, there's codependency, there's enmeshment, and secondary gain. And Elaine, if you'd move over to the next slide. As you can see on this slide, there's more on support dynamics in the recovery program session 33. So I always say to my clients, family dynamics will always have played a part somewhere in your illness. And I don't think I've come across a client yet, or indeed myself, where family dynamics didn't play a part at some stage. Now, it can be current family dynamics, and it also can be family dynamics that played a part in your childhood. Because if you think about how our personality gets shaped, it often gets shaped because of the things that have happened to us, you know, in our families and sort of during our growing up and our formative years. As you know, relationships are a big part of the recovery program, because they're one of the 8 elements, and relationships are, you know, within the family are often really mega important. So it's worth just having a think about your own family dynamics and how they might be affecting you and affecting your symptoms. So moving on now, Elaine, if you move on to the next one. I'm going to start talking now about some of the really, really tricky things. And they're tricky because we don't necessarily see them when we're in them. And thanks to Kelly for doing such brilliant graphics. I want you to look at the graphic on this one and see that you've got a couple there where they're tied together. And that's exactly what happens in codependency. So what is a codependent relationship? Well, they're one where one person supports another who may be ill, or maybe has some sort of disability, or even an addiction, because indeed it was addictions and partners of addicts where codependency was first sort of thought about and came to the fore. So what happens is the person that's doing the caring becomes overzealous and excessive, and the person being cared for can become unconsciously over-dependent on the care that they receive. And often the unconscious mind may often wonder how how this relationship, this close relationship, might be affected if they get better. Now, codependent relationships can show themselves in different ways. We often see them with intimate partners, and you know, there's nothing wrong with having a partner who's supportive. It's just when it goes too far, and you know, the tie that you see, you know, becomes a problem really, and it becomes unhealthy. We often see it as well, and Elaine and I have often talked about doing a separate webinar on this, about mothers and daughters. Mothers and daughters, often there's codependency there. It might be that mum already has an exhaustive condition, and then her daughter gets an exhaustive condition, and then in their bids to sort of support each other, it all gets a bit complicated, and sometimes there's role reversals, and sometimes it does become very unhealthy, and they almost enable each other to stay ill. But of course, this is all unconscious. Nobody does this consciously knowing. We all want to get well. So that's why these are quite tricky issues, and when we first hear about them, we think, no, that can't possibly apply to us.
Liz,
so that's, yeah.
On codependency and these things that we're talking about now, and it's, the difficulty is, and I think over the years we've discussed this and we've seen it in so many people and helped them break through. It's something that just gradually, insidiously develops, because people find themselves in a tricky situation often, don't they, without the right information. And so just gradually they're trying to sort of support each other. It's not anything anyone sets out to do, is it? But unfortunately, absolutely, it's one of those things, isn't it, where it just becomes normal.
Yes, and I think you're right in what you say, is it grows. It starts off completely, probably innocently, and then it grows into something, and the longer that the person is ill, the more it grows into something that may be considered to be unhealthy. So yeah, that's exactly the way it goes.
So I think just on that note, I remember realising at some point in my recovery that I hadn't even noticed it, but when I'd been in crash phase, Rob had been doing, my husband had been doing everything for me, you know, because you're so poorly. But then it was only when I sort of read around this that I started to sit back and observe and notice that I was actually letting him do everything for me, even though I was getting a bit better. And so I had to sort of take the reins a little bit and tell him, you know, because he was just preempting and doing everything for me instead of supporting me in rehabilitating myself to do things for myself.
Absolutely, and we'll talk a little bit about secondary gain when we get onto that slide, but all these things are quite closely sort of connected, really.
Yeah, they are. Right, do you want the next?
Okay, yeah, next slide then, please. Okay, so we're going to talk about enmeshment. I don't even like this word. I find it really hard to say, but actually it's a word that comes from family systems theory. And again, Kelly's done a great job of finding that graphic, because this is a real sort of family dynamic, really. So if you think about a family that you know, maybe, or maybe your own family, sometimes on the surface, the family can appear to be very close, very nurturing, and, you know, quite okay. But often, if you're a family member, beneath the surface, there's other things going on. So, for example, a lot of the family members aren't allowed to be independent or autonomous. They have to sort of follow the rules in the family. And you know, this can be quite difficult. But of course, because it's perhaps all we've ever known, well, we don't know any different. So it feels completely normal to us because that's always what we've experienced. So these are why these are blind spots, really, because we don't necessarily know them, because they're what we've known and they've always been quite normal to us. Often in these type of families, family members get given roles and labels, and indeed I'm going to talk about a case study a bit later on where you'll sort of see this. So you might be labelled the clever one, you might be labelled the organiser, the go-to person, the problem solver. I mean, for example, in my family, I was kind of the problem solver, and I guess that's how I kind of got into counselling, really, because I used to find that people used to come to me and ask me things, ask me for advice and whatever, and it was kind of the role I took on, but I never really thought about it. I just kind of did it. And none of these things are problems. It's always when we do too much of them, or we don't want to be doing them, and sometimes we have difficulty saying no, but I'm going to be coming on to that as well. Also, guarding family secrets can sometimes be paramount in enmesh families. So let's say if dad might be alcohol dependent, the whole family rallies around and keeps the secret, because you know it can be embarrassing, and that's one of the family rules. One of the other things about enmesh families is sometimes if you try to be different and you try to escape or whatever, it's frowned upon, and the difficult one may often be sort of cut off, and you've often heard people labelled the black sheep. And that's what happens in enmeshed families. Obviously, you know, we're only really scratching the surface of this today, but I'm just giving you some clues to look for, which, you know, may be happening in your family, and they will all be unconscious triggers to your symptoms, but actually because it's all we've ever known, we think it's quite a normal way of going on, and it's only really when we start to really go into things that we think, okay, we need to sort of make some changes here. Okay, Elaine, on to the next slide. Right, so now we're going to move on to secondary gain, which is kind of connected to codependency. And this is sort of a description of secondary gain. They're unconscious benefits, and that's the really important bit. They're unconscious, we don't know about them, that a person gets from not getting better or overcoming a problem. So, for example, someone might hate their job and they get ill, and what it means is that if they get better, they might have to go back to that job that they hate. So, therefore, the unconscious gives them a real secondary gain in thinking, well, it's better to stay ill, isn't it? Now, I know consciously we all absolutely do want to get better, don't we? But the unconscious is very powerful, and this is why it's a blind spot, and this is what we're always trying to find in therapy, always trying to dig out what's going on that we might not really know about. Also, there's a sort of secondary gain. If you think about if you've been ill for a long time, there might have been things that you've actually got out of doing because you can't do them anymore because you're ill. But really, when you get better, you don't really want to go back to doing them anyway. So, you know, there can be sort of unconscious secondary gain there. And I just want to give you an example of secondary gain that I was given by a group of GPs. I was at a conference with GPs who were talking about medically unexplained symptoms. And they were describing people who perhaps had an accident at work, and had an accident and you know, injured something or whatever, and they were putting in a compensation claim. And then what happened was the actual injury should have put itself right, but they still continued to get maybe some pain or some other symptoms, but they didn't get better. And the GPs were saying that often they didn't get better until the compensation claim was sorted, because the unconscious was saying, well, I can't possibly have a compensation claim, you know, when I'm completely recovered and perfectly all right. So I thought that was interesting that it came from GPs and was a really good example. And of course, the person themselves consciously, obviously wants to get better, but these are the blind spots, and these are things that are going on unconsciously. Okay, next slide, please, Elaine. So we are going to move on now. The reason we've put the slide back on is we're going to move on to number 3, which is the blue pain, and that's the hidden bit. And we're going to talk a little bit about high sensitivity, guilt and loss. Now, some of you will now have realised that you are highly sensitive, and it was a big realisation to me actually, because I didn't realise I was sensitive at all until I did the test, as part of the programme. So that was quite a realisation. But if you are sensitive, you do tend to keep it from other people because you often feel that you're different. And you often feel, I think it's described as a fish out of water. So I think it's useful to just reflect on just a few things that you can do about sensitivity, because these are the things you hide from other people because you're embarrassed about showing it. One of the things that I particularly do is recognise the triggers, such as news. I mean, for example, I can't watch the migrant situation and the people in the boats and the drownings and things like that. I just can't watch it, and it's a real sort of trigger. So recognise your triggers and avoid them where you can. Another thing that some of my clients have done recently, which I think has been really helpful, is they've shared the information on sensitivity with their partners, because partners don't necessarily understand these things, but when they see the reasons for it and see how it works, you get a lot more understanding. And of course, then that's bringing it out of the hidden, isn't it? And bring it into the open bit. I am sensitive, and these are the kind of things that that push my buttons and that affect me. The other thing to think about is it's okay to want some time on your own, and in fact it's a necessity. So plan some downtime wherever you can. And these are just a few things. There's a lot more in the programme, but high sensitivity is an issue, and we need to sort of look after ourselves and recognise what we can and can't do, and what pushes our buttons. The upside of sensitivity, of course, is our inner knowing and our gut feelings. And I always say to clients, really listen to your gut feelings, because if something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. And always listen to what it tells you. Okay, just moving on a little bit to guilt now. Guilt is another thing that often comes out of enmeshed families. We often feel guilty because we can't do the things that other people expect of us. And then, when we've got ill, there's even less things that we can do for other people, so we start to feel more guilty. And again, we've picked out a few of these things. There is a lot more, but guilt seems to be one of the things that I hear a lot. And I have clients that say, I feel guilty about everything. So just a few quick strategies for dealing with guilt. And again, there's more, but this is just to sort of give you some clues. Firstly, it's good to acknowledge it and think about where it affects you in your life. What does it make you do that actually you don't want to do, but you do it because if you don't, you'll feel guilty? One of the other things to do is to write about it. Some things may come up when you write about things that you didn't know, and it can help you to gain another perspective. And it also can be a great release of feelings. But I think it's really important to notice the behaviours that you have because of guilt. Work on changing these, and in small, in small steps. Saying no nicely, and we've got a slide for that later, but that's really important, I think, is being able to say no, because so many of us say yes when actually we mean no. And then what does our body do? Our body gives us the symptoms, doesn't it? Just listen to your language as well. That's quite important. If you hear yourself saying I should, I must, if only, those are some of the language we use when we feel guilty. Another thing about guilt, which I love this expression, it says guilt grows in the dark. And I think that's so true. So talk to someone about it. So that's really important. Okay, on to the next one, please, Elaine.
Liz, can I just share something on guilt?
You can, yeah.
Just because, this is something I struggled with. That highly sensitive tendency that we've got means that we are so empathic that we always worry, don't we? How we almost feel how other people might feel when we do something. So we preempt any situation by how another might feel. So this is just the recipe for guilt, really, because then we always want to try and avoid feeling guilty. But the way I've found a really good strategy that works for me, I sort of try and, again, stand to one side, look, think about the guilt. It's definitely not as bad as it used to be. I certainly don't make myself do anything now that doesn't feel right for me. But there are a couple of situations, family situations, that I don't want to avoid altogether. But I've just reduced the amount of time I see certain people, and instead of feeling guilty, I just affirm. I think, no, I do the best I possibly can. I'm a really good daughter, or a really good sister, or I'm a really good auntie, or whatever, and I just actually affirm myself and support myself around that guilt. And that's what, one of the tips that we give people is, know that you probably will feel it, but actually then step aside from it and do some affirmations around, sometimes you just think that you can never give enough, but actually you can. And it's about doing what's right for you and honouring your well-being, but just making sure that you're not beating yourself up over a certain situation, because I think because of that over empathic, that tendency to over associate with how someone else feels, we build the guilt up ourselves, so we can actually diffuse it. And as Liz said, all those tips she's given you are just brilliant, and writing it down is great. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that, because it's never going to go away completely, I think. But I agree with Louise Hay when she says guilt is a useless emotion, and I think it is.
Okay, thanks for that, Elaine. That's a brilliant example. Okay, can we move on to the next slide? Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about loss. Loss is often something that we keep from other people because we don't want to acknowledge it. Sometimes loss is something that we keep from ourselves too. I don't know what the people that are listening today, what you're like at dealing with loss, but I think generally our personality types aren't particularly good at it. We don't tend to acknowledge it, or we think we've dealt with it and we'll say, oh yes, I've dealt with all of that, and actually we haven't. So loss can cover many things. There's obviously losing people that are dear to us. Loss of pets can be a biggie, and we often feel embarrassed about telling people that we're so upset about the loss of a pet, because they may judge us. But I think one of the biggest losses in terms of the exhaustive conditions is we often have a great loss around the life that we could have had over the past few years if we hadn't been ill. And again, this is something that I hear a lot. But I always say to clients, look, we can't change the past, but actually, my goodness, can't we make a good future? And that, of course, is why you're all here and you're all on today. And I always say my mantra is make the rest of my life the best of my life. And wherever you are in your life, you can do that. And certainly with, when you recover, it opens up so many things to you. So clients get a bit concerned about opening up about loss, because they often describe it as, I'm afraid I might open a can of worms. So just be aware of that. It is something that can be a bit hidden from you, as well as you hiding it from other people. But again, journaling, writing, I'd really recommend that. It's such a simple therapy, doesn't cost anything, but actually it really does a lot in terms of release of feelings. Okay, so on to the next one, please, Elaine. Okay, so back to the Johari window again, and we're just going to deal with the last portion now, which is the grey area, as you can see. It's the unknown. Now this part of the window, this part of ourself, is the part that's unknown to us, and it's unknown to everyone else around us. So often it's really sort of deeply buried. and we have no idea about it. So this isn't one to fear, because it can be found out, but often you have to kind of do quite a bit of digging to sort of get there. So, for example, you might have some beliefs and behaviours that have been created maybe from some traumatic events, because usually when traumatic events happen to us, we create some beliefs, and then we maybe get some safety behaviours that we create from it too. And all of those are possible to get back to in things like EFT, matrix reimprinting, those sorts of therapies. So even though these things are buried deep, it doesn't mean to say that we can't access them. It just takes a bit of work to do so. But because they're really unknown, we do get quite a lot of unconscious triggers, and you might find that you get anxious. Now, a lot of the time we know why we're anxious. We absolutely know why. But sometimes we get anxiety and we have no clue. That can often be an unconscious trigger. Okay. So I'm just going to sort of move on and talk about anniversary syndrome, because this is an interesting concept too. And it's a case of the body remembering what the mind doesn't. So there might have been a traumatic event, and I've certainly seen this referred to in PTSD with soldiers who've come back after, being in traumatic battles and things like that. And, that they've done a lot of work on things, and, they're doing really well. But at a certain time of year, they will start to get symptoms or anxiety or triggers or whatever, and they won't know why. And often it is because the body remembers the anniversary of the battle, but their conscious mind has definitely forgot it, because actually that's a protective mechanism too, but the body remembers it. So anniversary syndrome, I think, is something that probably applies to a lot of us, but we really have no clue about it because we don't even remember what that particular anniversary was. So it is just an interesting one to think about when you know that a particular time of year or a particular day or whatever, that you get some symptoms that don't really make any sense. Often it's because of something like anniversary syndrome. Just going back to beliefs and behaviours, just an example of someone, and this was a fear of someone I knew who had a fear of the dentist, but he couldn't remember why. He had no idea why. He just knew he was fearful of the dentist, and used to get to the dentist and run out when he got to reception, and never got as far as the dentist, and asked me if I could help to do something about it. And this is why I'm saying, although these are unknown to us, we can actually get there with some type of therapies. And what we did with him was we did some matrix reimprinting. We went back to an event, and it was an event when I think he was about 5 years old, and he'd had, in those days it was gas, and he'd come round while the gas, he was under and having his tooth taken out. But he hadn't remembered that consciously. So that's just an example, because if you're worried and thinking, well, I'll never get to know these, actually with a bit of work, you can work them out. So if we could move on then, I'm going to move on to my case study now. So those 4 pains, hopefully you've sort of taken in a bit of what's in each one, and you can think about, well, what parts of your life sort of apply, to what we've talked about this morning. So this is just a case study which sort of encompasses some of the things that we've talked about. So this is a lady living with a new partner. She's aged 30, and she came to me in phase 2, just really, in the crash stage. And really, she had no idea really of what she was experiencing, apart from the fact she felt ill and she wanted to sleep all the time. But it was interesting that there was a lot of family dynamics and relationships in her past. So she'd lived in a small community. Now, this small community was very close, and she'd lived with another partner in that small community. And it was a very enmeshed family. And the family dynamic, where she was concerned, was she was the clever one, she was the go-to person. So that was kind of her role in the family, really. But she had a relationship breakup. So the relationship broke up, and just to give you an example of, you know, the sort of enmeshed family and kind of how it works, she told her mum that she'd decided to end this relationship, and her mum was more upset about the man that she was leaving and started to cry about him than about her. So you can see how, you know, how roles get very kind of dysfunctional in these types of families. So she decided that she was going to leave this community, and of course that's a bit frowned on. It's not really done. So I think she hoped that by getting away she would, because she actually got away and she found a new partner, and I think she hoped that she'd be able to cut those ties. But unfortunately, those ties still came with her, because the family were just treating her exactly the same, even though she was 200 miles away, and she'd be getting texts and requests for help and whatever, in exactly the same way as she had before. So her strongest emotion around all of this was guilt. There was guilt about leaving. There was guilt about not wanting to say yes and whatever, you know, to all her family's requests. So you can see, so what happens is, she leaves, she finds a new partner, things are going really well, and then she crashes, and that's we often do see that. And so obviously for her, I gave her a lot of strategies for dealing with the guilt, and she's doing really well now, and, you know, coming up with lots of things. And lots of changes in behaviour, because that's quite important. Lots of changes in behaviour to make it a lot easier for her to handle. So finally, my last slide, and I know I've packed a lot into a short time. If you could move on, Elaine. I'm not going to go through these, but this is something I found off the internet, which I thought was really quite helpful. And I think so many of us keep saying yes when we mean no. And so this is 10 ways to say no. So you can have a little look at that and think about, you know, can you use any of them? So I finally come to the end of what I had to say. So Elaine, it's over to you for the last slides.
Thank you so much, Liz. It's an absolute joy to have you on today with just such a wealth of experience. Whenever we plan one of these webinars, we end up spending hours talking about such interesting things. And I know that we've probably got many more to do going forward. And we just, as you said, skimmed the surface today. But thank you for tackling some very, very difficult subjects. They are, we always say at the Chrysalis Effect, don't we, that we don't shy away from being honest with people, because I know back when I was ill, and I know when you were ill, we would have loved somebody to have been able to shine a torch on some of the unconscious stuff for us, wouldn't we?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. And it wouldn't have taken us quite so long.
Most of my realisations have come later.
Okay, so let's just, are you able to stay on if there's any questions, Liz?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Great. So if anybody's got any questions for Liz, then do type them in, because you know, I know that she'll be more than happy to answer them. And if you have to zoom off, then Liz's details are on the screen there. So I know she'll be more than happy if you drop her over an email or whatever. So you know, really what today is about is that window, that Johari window, which is, I think, such a great concept to see that there's just those 4 areas. And of course, what we're doing at the Chrysalis Effect and working together is we are looking to expand so that you can access your window to the soul, because really, I really believe that all of these things that we are struggling with, we're born with this sensitivity so that we can tap in and we can do the work to be able to step up and embrace who we are. And when we do the things that make us joyful and the things that, you know, really make us feel inner peace, then we're on the right track. We are supposed to be living authentically and honouring who we are and not trying to be someone else. So really, this recovery journey, whenever anyone comes out the other side, they always say the same thing: looking back, my illness was a gift, because it makes you reevaluate, it makes you reassess, it makes you shine a torch on the things that maybe you've been suppressing over the years, and really allows you to access that window to your soul. So I hope that today has maybe had a little light bulb moment. Maybe it would be great if anybody's willing to share any of the things that we touched on today. Was there anything there, you know, the codependency, the family dynamics, the enmeshment, the secondary game, was there anything there that something occurred to you that, you know, a little light bulb moment that you thought, yes, I have, you know, I struggle with that, because all of those things will serve as a stressor that's, you know, that's continuing for your body to be producing symptoms. So it'd be great if you want to share any of that. That would be great. I just thought I would share this. When we realize that sensitivity is a gift and not a liability, that's when we start to get our strength. So if you're new to this concept of a highly sensitive person, then the work of Elaine Aron is a must buy. It's the highly sensitive child and the highly sensitive person. And right at the beginning of both of those books, there's that checklist that you can fill in. And I guarantee you that when you start ticking those boxes, you'll probably tick most of them. And it's everything from not liking scratchy labels in your clothes to how you feel around very noisy and you know, sort of certain environments that you wouldn't feel comfortable in. It's that sort of thing. So it's a really great test to do, because then I believe that the journey is about embracing that. So now, for those that are guests today, if you do need help with your recovery and you haven't accessed any of the free stuff, then please do go onto the website there, thechrysaliseffect.com, and you can get your 8 essentials guide there, which will give you a really good insight into the 8 areas essential for recovery and sort of get you started on your journey. So that's a good start for you. If you already maybe have looked at that and it's, you know, you've come on just to see a little bit more, then of course there is, that's just the website and the guide. There is, of course, the opportunity for you to come on and try the recovery program. And you can do that for 30 days. It may not be the right approach for you, but I always think you've got, you know, nothing to lose and everything to gain. And we can support you through, and you can access things and really sort of have a look and come into the community and start to work on your recovery. And that's what we focus on all the time. So that's the website. You can go on there. It's thechrysaliseffect.com, and then it's a / and 30D, which gives you 30 days to you know, use everything and see how you get along with it, and if it's the right approach for you. And if you know you would like some help with your recovery, first thing you can do is we'll get you to fill out a health profile, and we can get you a free health review as well in there. So I've got some really exciting news about the Chrysalis Effect. I'll break it on next month's webinar. Big changes going on here. I'm off to a seminar tomorrow about the changes, a changing NHS with Professor Morby in London. So behind the scenes, we're doing the work to make sure that recovery is accessible to all. So just a few, yeah, there's just that a little bit more information about the recovery program. If we can help you with your recovery, then we'd be delighted to. So next month's webinar is Ask the Recovery Experts, and it is Wednesday the 18th of May 2016, and it's at 10:30 a.m. So if we do change it, we will let you know in plenty of time. So let's have a little look, see what anybody's saying on here. So, oh, lots of things. So, gosh, there's so much on here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get through it all. So we've got Sensitivities are so much heightened when in a stressed and bad phase. I don't think about what has been said by who or whatever, and I've recovered when I've recovered and rested and in a well phase. Yeah, it is tricky. You are sensitive all the time. That's the thing. It's just that what we try to do is suppress it, and we get then accumulative stress, and then that's often when we'll tip over. So yeah, so when you are well, when you're in a better phase, Ramona, then you are more able to deal with things. And that's a really good tip for recovery, actually, is that you monitor how you are, and when you're in a really good space, then perhaps that's the time when you can deal with spending a little bit of time with some of those perhaps more difficult people. If you are feeling like you're challenged and you're not in a great space, then that's the time when you absolutely avoid it at all costs. And Tina's saying she can relate to this regarding her role at work. It's like an adopted dysfunctional family, and currently off work since January, working up to returning and anxious that it will make her ill again. Do you know what, Tina? I'm going to be really honest with you here. It will. You are being shown this because, really this is about you making great decisions for you. And if you are working in an environment, would you agree, Liz, where you're literally thrown into, even though you're being paid to be in it, it's not worth it, is it? To be exposed to a dysfunctional team or dysfunctional family within the workplace is actually harder than having a family you only have to visit at weekends. Would you agree?
Yes, it's something. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something that I see quite a lot, because sometimes when we're in a job, we might be in a job that actually doesn't serve us very well, but we think we have to stay there, to pay the mortgage or whatever, and actually sometimes it is the job that's making us ill, and we have to realise that and do something about it.
Well, that's what I was saying at the beginning. That's one of the most toughest things for people to realise. And it's so amazing that how many times people come on and say, either they're in resistance that it's their job, or there's a lot of fear around giving up the job because of all the all what we perceive we're getting from it. But if it's making you ill, then the price you are paying for that job is your health. And ultimately, I don't think any job's worth that. I really don't. And I do know how hard it is, because I had a business I'd built up, and I kept telling myself I couldn't leave. And I just kept trying to get better to go back to it. But until I let go of that job or that business, I didn't recover, and that's the truth, really. So that's one of the great things is starting to look at what would you, if there was nothing in your way, what would be your absolute dream career? What would you love to be doing on a daily basis? And that's your starting point. You've got to have a vision for where you'd like to go. And often we find that these sensitives are creative, and they're trying to force themselves into maybe an office scenario or something that they're not really cut out for. That's where that fish out of water thing comes from. Elizabeth saying anniversary syndrome of a time of the year when a traumatic event happened that was the final straw for her developing ME, and it always has the same impact on her health. Yes, we were talking about that the other day, and I was amazed. There's a certain time of the year when my health dips, and when I looked back, it was the same time of year where I lost a baby. I had the following year I had a baby at the same time, my daughter, who was then emergency cesarean and in special care, and the following year my first husband left, and it was all in the same month. Can you believe that? So I thought that time of the year it had to do with the seasons that my health dipped, but I wasn't even aware of anniversary syndrome. So there you are. Sarah's saying she was on disability benefits, and in her mind I was guilty to go to the park with the children, work extra hours and feel like I'm doing wrong, like I'm being watched by the fraud team. I know I was struggling and needed financial support. Yes, Sarah, it's really tough, isn't it? When you're trying to deal with this illness but still keep afloat. So yeah, absolutely. And she's let go of the benefits now, and it feels like a weight has lifted, and she can work the hours and choose to go to the park and without feeling she's being watched. That's a brilliant realization, Sarah. So thank you for sharing that. Oh, Elizabeth, yes, certainly. I'll contact you after the webinar. Elizabeth wants to know about our practitioner training. Okay, and Ramona's saying, brilliant webinar. Thank you. Love and hugs to all. Enjoy the sunshine. So thank you, everybody. I know some people have gone because we've run over. But thanks again, Liz, for a wonderful webinar. Really appreciate your time. It sounds like people have had some great realizations. So have a fantastic healing month, and if you want any more information or want to, then do get in contact, and I shall look forward to be with you again next month. So thanks again, Liz, and see you soon, everybody.